Hey everyone! A lot of us have those games we used to play when we were younger that we never forget. We'd play them and replay them and replay them until we pretty much had to stop. You know, for eating or those other pesky essential things. I'm kidding. Or am I? Anyway, I had quite a few of those myself, which I'll likely get back to on this channel sometime, but the first one that immediately comes to mind is this Spider-Man game from 2000. It also had releases on the Nintendo 64, Dreamcast, and PC, but this PS1 version is the one that I came to know personally. Frankly, I'm surprised it's still in as good a shape as it is. I remembered loving everything about it, from the idea of Spidey making the jump to 3D for the first time, to the web-slinging and huge roster of characters from the Marvel Universe, but I do understand that nostalgia can also blind us sometimes. It's part of the reason I started this series of videos in the first place. So with that said, let's dive in, and see how Spider-Man for the PS1 holds up today. Back in 2000, developers were still trying to perfect the 3D action platformer formula, some with better results than others. Almost 2 years before Sam Raimi's Spider-Man would help change the face of superhero movies forever, Neversoft, the developers of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, released a Spider-Man game focusing on the series' comic book roots. It even used the same gameplay engine as Tony Hawk. The game's story is pretty jam-packed. Otto Octavius, also known as Doc Ock, is allegedly reformed from his villainous ways and is developing new technology for the benefit of mankind. As Peter Parker is in the stands of this big event, an imposter Spider-Man comes in and steals Otto's technology. We also get glimpses of Eddie Brock becoming Venom, and some mysterious shadowy figures, all before Spidey heads out to fight crime, clear his name, and stop the imposter. This sounds familiar, but I can't quite put my finger on... oh, right. Although your environments, at least outside of buildings, have a pretty open feel to them, they are actually condensed, with a straightforward path you need to follow in order to finish each stage. The character models are a little blocky by today's standards, despite being considered excellent at the time, but they are still very animated and expressive, giving it a very stylistic touch. The voice acting is also impressive, as it contains multiple actors from both the 90s Spider-Man animated series and Spider-Man Unlimited, most notable being Rino Romano, returning as the voice of Spidey himself.
Parker hates it when I get the drop on him.
I hate it when he gets the drop on me.
Oh, and did I mention Stan Lee did some of his famous narrations for this?
Uh-oh, Spidey. Scorpions had it out for old J. Jonah Jameson from day one, blaming Jameson for being stuck in his scorpion suit. Spidey had better get there quickly, or JJJ may end up in the obituaries of his own paper.
Oh yeah, this is a Marvel experience, alright. The soundtrack was composed by Tommy Tallarico of G4 and Video Games Live fame. I thought the mix of industrial rock, metal, and nu metal actually worked quite well here and added to the excitement of the action sequences.
Ahead of these guys.
Spidey has an amazing, pun intended, set of moves and abilities, ranging from punches, kicks, all the way to web attacks such as webbing up enemies, creating spikes for additional punching damage, and even a web dome that temporarily stuns large groups if they get close enough to you. You can also aim your webbing for more precise grabbing, fire shots of web fluid as a projectile, and even throw enemies as you're webbing them up. If you need to climb up or reach a ceiling, the R1 button will also web zip you up. Most importantly to the gameplay, though, is the web slinging itself. When close enough to a building or surface, pressing and holding the R2 button allows Spidey to web sling to it. This only works when you're close enough to said surface, though. Otherwise, you just fall and die. This would serve as a blueprint for web slinging in just about every 3D Spider-Man game going forward, making this a pretty significant game from a historical perspective. Heck, you even have a spider sense that warns you of danger.
Spider sense tingling.
Each level in the game is pretty unique in its own right. The first stage has you swing toward a bank, infiltrate the bank robbers, and stop a bomb with a little Spidey ingenuity. The next stage has you race to get to the Daily Bugle in order to stop Scorpion from tearing J. Jonah Jameson a new one, before you proceed to fight him as a boss encounter. Stage 3 has you escaping from police helicopters with a comically large amount of missiles that head your way, etc, etc. The point is, the game is obviously quite varied all the way to the end. The biggest difference that you'll notice between this game and most of the recent Spider-Man games is that this is not technically an open world or sandbox style game. The game even went so far as to use fog as an excuse for you not being able to touch the ground. That said, it never really bothered me much as a kid, so mission accomplished, I guess? At least it ran smoothly. I barely had any slowdown the entire time. The boss fights are mostly pretty fun and strategic. One of my personal favorites was the Mysterio fight, which came completely out of left field for me. That said, I think they made some of the fight methods a little too obvious sometimes. Looking at you, Carnage.
I come!
The endgame sequence was also quite scary, partly due to the idea behind it. Doc Ock hit with the Carnage symbiote? Yikes! But also because it was extremely difficult to get away in time if you didn't know what you were doing or where you were going. This will likely take people at least a few tries to complete. The game's mechanics work overall, and landing successful hits on your enemies is really satisfying. It's not perfect though. I found myself dying over pretty ridiculous circumstances on more than one occasion. The game's camera is unfortunately one of the biggest culprits for this. It's positioned to adjust in whatever direction Spidey is facing, but only when he stops, meaning that if you need to adjust it while running, you're basically out of luck. It isn't that big of a deal at first, but as you begin to reach the later stages, it will start to affect things. Some stages also dragged on way too long. As much as I enjoyed the majority of this game, I could live without ever seeing another sewer stage for the rest of my life. Still, each sequence did manage to feel unique and different, and the Marvel fan service was off the scale. I had to play the game multiple times just to catch all of the references they were throwing at us. The game's also got a ton of replay value. On top of the fun story, there's also a training mode, which helps you perfect all of the game's different techniques. Like hunting for collectibles? There are hidden comic books scattered throughout the game, which you can view in a gallery. They're all considered to be key issues in the web-slinger's life, and mostly pertain to the characters and events in-game as well. Still not enough for you? How about the what-if mode? Yes, putting in this little cheat code changes up all kinds of things in the story. Some examples include this awkward but hilarious dance sequence, this shot of the Submariner watching me as I fight with Carnage, this blimp to take and carry me out of stage 3, the literal Ark of the Covenant. Seriously? Seriously. Wow. Ark of the... Wow. Black Cat being forced to dance in this cage until you free her. And one of my personal favorites, Scorpion making a reference to Stephen King's The Shining.
Here's Johnny!
Needless to say, there's plenty to do here. Even with the slight flaws like the camera, it's well worth getting the hang of just to see what else is out there in this game's world and perfect your combat techniques. This was a very ambitious project for its time, and it shows. Making the shift to 3D was a mixed bag during the PS1 and N64 eras of gaming, but I believe this is one of those rare titles that actually holds up quite well. The controls, while admittedly a little sloppy, are still very intuitive and inspired so many future titles in this franchise, and for good reason. If you could live with the fact that this game is not open world and the graphics are not quite as revolutionary as they once were, I think you'll find something that will truly surprise you in all of the best ways. And that's going to do it for this video. Thanks for watching, and as always, let me know your thoughts on this game in the comments below, and I will see you all again next time.